Today in history, October 20th, folks. A date so packed with drama, irony, and geopolitical weirdness, it's basically the Cheesecake Factory menu of human events. You got revolution, conquest, war, paranoia, and, for dessert, a dash of Bigfoot and a monster mash. It's like history looked at the calendar and said, let's just dump everything today and clock out early. So buckle up, because October 20th has it all. The deals that built nations, the wars that broke them, the scandals that shook democracy, and the rock bands that crashed before the encore. Segment 1, the Great American Real Estate Scam, the Louisiana Purchase, 1803. On this day in 1803, the U.S. Senate ratified the Louisiana Purchase, the biggest real estate deal in history. For $15 million, Thomas Jefferson bought an area of land so massive it made Texas look like Rhode Island. And in true American fashion, no one bothered to ask the people already living there. Jefferson, the guy who once said, if the Constitution doesn't say it, you can't do it, suddenly decided the Constitution probably meant go ahead and buy half a continent. What's the worst that could happen? It's like the strict vegan who suddenly orders a Big Mac and calls it a constitutional exception. Napoleon, meanwhile, sold the land because he was broke and getting ready to invade literally everyone else in Europe. The man needed cash, and Jefferson showed up like the world's most gullible Facebook marketplace buyer. You're telling me I can have all this for $15 million and no one will fact check it? Deal. Of course, the deal doubled America's size overnight and doubled its hypocrisy. The man who said all men are created equal just acquired millions of acres where slavery would spread like bad Wi-Fi. Congratulations, America. You just bought moral complexity in bulk. Segment 2, drawing the line, 1818, the U.S.-Canada border. 15 years later, on October 20th, 1818, the U.S. and Britain decided it was time to stop fighting and start drawing lines. They signed the Convention of 1818, which established the 49th parallel as the U.S.-Canada border, because nothing says peaceful coexistence like agreeing where to stop bothering each other. The British got Canada, the Americans got bragging rights, and we all got the world's longest undefended border, also known as the line where maple syrup meets mass shootings. This treaty was a turning point. It was the first time the U.S. said, hey, maybe we can solve something without a war. And Britain said, we'd love to, but we still get Newfoundland, right? Of course, that line would later extend west to the Pacific, because when you're America, every negotiation ends with, and while we're at it, can we have Oregon too? Segment 3, high altitude humiliation. The Sino-Indian War, 1962. Fast forward to October 20th, 1962, when China launched a surprise attack on India over who owned the most unlivable piece of frozen rock on Earth. The Sino-Indian War began over two regions so barren that even goats looked at them and said, nah, I'll stay home. India's Prime Minister Nehru had believed in the motto, Hindi Chini Bye Bye, which means Indians and Chinese are brothers. Turns out they were Cain and Abel. China won the war in about a month, teaching India a hard lesson about friendship. Just because your neighbor smiles doesn't mean he's not digging trenches in your yard. It was a turning point for Asia, and proof that even in the highest mountains, mankind's ego has no altitude limit. Segment 4, the March that made Mao, 1935. October 20th, 1935, the end of the Long March. The Chinese Communist Red Army, after a year of running, starving, and freezing, finally stopped running. Mao Zedong went from guy in the back yelling strategy tips to guy in charge of everything. The Long March was a brutal 6,000-mile retreat, basically a marathon through hell. Of the 86,000 who started, fewer than 10% survived. Imagine if the Oregon Trail was written by Karl Marx and directed by Quentin Tarantino. But here's the kicker. They lost the march, but won the war. Mao turned a retreat into a myth, spinning it like a communist PR miracle. Sure, we're half dead, but we're heroically half alive. That propaganda fuel kept the revolution burning until 1949, when Mao finally got to say, remember when we lost? Turns out that was step 1. Segment 5, MacArthur's Beach Day, 1944. 9 years later, another dramatic return. October 20th, 1944. General Douglas MacArthur landed on Leyte Island in the Philippines, fulfilling his famous promise, "I shall return." Which, fun fact, was almost "we shall return," until MacArthur said, "Sorry, I don't do plural." He waded ashore, delivered a perfectly timed speech, and America ate it up. It was part liberation, part ego trip, and part photo op. Because nothing says war hero like a man who brings his own lighting crew to a beach landing. Still, it worked. The Philippines got hope, the Allies got momentum, and MacArthur got another paragraph in every history book. And, presumably, a really good hair day. Segment 6, The Fall of Gaddafi, 2011. Jump ahead to October 20th, 2011. Muammar Gaddafi, Libya's dictator since the Nixon administration, met his end. He ruled for 42 years, which in dictator years is basically forever. His whole regime was part James Bond villain, part bad stand-up comic. He had gold-plated guns, a tent in the desert, and fashion that screamed Vegas Colonel Sanders. When the Arab Spring hit, Gaddafi said, "My people love me." Spoiler, they did not. NATO helped rebels topple his regime, and Gaddafi was found hiding in a drainage pipe, which, symbolically, is the exact location every dictator eventually ends up, in the gutter of history, complaining about NATO. His death ended a dictatorship, but opened the door to chaos, proving once again that toppling a tyrant is easy. Replacing him with stability is like herding cats with guns. Segment 7, The Saturday Night Massacre, 1973. October 20th, 1973. President Nixon fired the man investigating him in what became known as the Saturday Night Massacre. Basically, Nixon's plan was, if you can't beat justice, just delete it. He told the Attorney General to fire the special prosecutor. The AG said no and quit. So Nixon told the Deputy AG. He said no and got fired. Then Nixon finally found a guy willing to do it, Robert Bork, who said, "Well, it's Saturday. I got nothing else going on." The public went ballistic. Nixon thought he was untouchable, but instead, he just became the world's angriest help wanted ad. Within weeks, impeachment was on the table. And 10 months later, Nixon was on a helicopter saying goodbye to America's last shred of trust. Meanwhile, across the globe that same day, another story was unfolding, but one involving beauty, art, and 0 felonies. Segment 8, The Sydney Opera House opens, 1973. While Nixon was self-destructing, Australia was having its best day ever. The Sydney Opera House officially opened, an architectural masterpiece that looks like a seashell and a spaceship had a baby. Designed by Danish architect Jorn Utzon, who quit halfway through construction because politicians kept micromanaging him, the building took 15 years and $80 million to finish, which means it was the only government project to ever go over budget and still make everyone proud. Now it's a global symbol, a reminder that even if humanity can't agree on borders or ideologies, we can all agree on that building looks awesome. Segment 9, Monsters, Mysteries, and Music, the Pop Culture Parade. October 20th is also where history takes its weird coffee break. In 1955, Tolkien released The Return of the King, which inspired decades of fantasy nerds, and at least 3 guys at Comic-Con who still think they're elves. In 1962, Monster Mash hit #1 on the charts, because apparently America said, the Cuban Missile Crisis is scary, but what if we made it a dance? In 1967, Bigfoot allegedly took a casual stroll through Northern California and got caught on film, proving that even mythical creatures crave screen time. And in 1977, tragedy struck. The Lynyrd Skynyrd plane crash killed key members of the band just 3 days after their album Street Survivors dropped, which, yes, was unfortunately titled. History isn't subtle, folks. It's poetic and cruel, like an English major with a vendetta. Segment 10, The Birthdays and Goodbyes Club. October 20th is apparently a cosmic party planner's nightmare. So many famous people born or dead, it's like Hollywood Week in heaven. Born today, Kamala Harris, Tom Petty, Mickey Mantle, and Snoop Dogg, which sounds like the weirdest dinner party ever. Someone's pitching climate reform, someone's hitting home runs, someone's strumming Free Fallin', and someone's just asking if they can smoke inside. Also born on this day, John Dewey, the philosopher who made American education what it is today, an experiment that's still grading itself. And let's not forget Sir Christopher Wren, the architect who rebuilt London after it literally burned down, proving that even in the 1600s, you could lose everything and still have a better housing market than we do now. Meanwhile, Herbert Hoover died on this day in 1964, a man who fed Europe but couldn't feed America during the Great Depression. History's cruel that way. One minute you're the hero, the next you're the name of a vacuum. In closing, the day that has it all. So what do we learn from October 20th? It's the ultimate historical mixtape. One part revolution, one part scandal, one part opera house, and a dash of Snoop for flavor. It's the day when Jefferson bought land he couldn't legally buy, Nixon fired everyone who could legally stop him, and Gaddafi proved that power, no matter how absolute, still fits in a drain pipe. It's a reminder that history doesn't repeat itself. It just remixes. Every age gets its own Jeffersons, Maos, Nixons, and monster mashes. The beats change, but the lyrics stay the same. Power tempts, art endures, and somewhere out there, Bigfoot's still dodging cameras. So happy October 20th, everyone. A day of consequence, chaos, and the occasional cryptid cameo. And remember, if history teaches us anything, it's that tomorrow's headlines are already practicing their high jump. Backwards.